Oral questions.
Oral questions. Questions on honorable leader. It should be next Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know that this Prime Minister isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. The Liberals have paralyzed this Parliament by refusing to respect your judgment, to produce the documents and give them to the RCMP. This is a $400 million scandal. Liberal-appointed executives gave money to their own businesses. 186 conflicts of interest, according to the Auditor General. Will the Liberals respect your judgment and give the evidence to the RCMP so we can get back to work? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition is saying is not true. This matter has been referred to the committee for further study. Will the Conservatives decide to follow that example?
The NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Prime Minister has ground the work of Parliament to a halt by refusing to respect your ruling. The government must hand over evidence to the police concerning the $400 million spending scandal that saw Liberal appointees give millions of dollars to their own companies. Wow. The Auditor General says there's 186 conflicts of interest in this scandel.
Oh,
Prime Minister, in the cover-up, respect your ruling, give the police the information so that we can have accountability and get back to work.
Yeah.
The Honourable Leader of the
Work for Canadians.
In the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's demonstrably false what the Leader of the Opposition is saying, because your ruling was to send this matter to the House and Procedure Affairs Committee for more study. And so, in fact, it is only the Conservatives that are now obstructing their own obstruction, because they don't want this to go to committee, because it would demonstrate that they are trying to upend charter rights and override police independence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right.
Nope.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliament can get back to work this minute if the government will just hand over the evidence to the police about this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. I found it interesting. They say everybody's going to lose their charter rights if the police get evidence into this $400 million Liberal spending scandal. Right. No, what will happen is that the Liberal nominees and appointees who engaged in 186 conflicts of interest to stuff their own pockets will be held criminally accountable, and Canadians might get their money back. Why won't they hand over the evidence, respect your ruling, so we can get back to work around here?
There you go. That's working for Canadians.
In the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what's interesting about this is that there's actually proof that the Leader of the Opposition is saying is false, because in your ruling you said this matter needs to go to the House and Procedures Affairs Committee for further study, because this is unprecedented in what the Conservatives are putting forward, because, as the RCMP mentioned, it would upend charter rights and it would blur the lines between judicial and legislative independence. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can follow your ruling and we can all go back to work, which is what exactly the Canadians want us to do. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
We want you to release those documents.
Members for being very patient and not taking the microphone. I'm going to remind the Honourable Member from South Shore St. Margaret's to do the same. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
A year ago today, a sadistic and genocidal death cult, Hamas, carried out the biggest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, and has 100 more hostages. Bring them home. Here at home, though, our Jewish friends and neighbors have been doubly victimized as anti-Semitic mobs take to the streets shouting, "From Palestine to Lebanon, Israel will soon be gone. There's only one solution: intifada, revolution." Will the government clearly and unequivocally condemn these genocidal chants from hateful mobs on our streets?
Yep. It's pretty crazy, man. Terrorist supporters in the streets of Canada.
Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, Judy Weinstein, Vivian Silver, Ben Mizrachi, Netta Epstein,
Oh my
Shir
goodness.
Georgi, Alexandre Luc, Idal Vital Kaploun, Tiferet Lapido. May their memories be a blessing. It was my honor to have met with their families here at home and in Israel. And on the anniversaries of Hamas' horrific attacks, my promise to their loved ones is the following: year after year, Canadians will honor their memories, and to Jewish people, we stand with you. We won't relent until the last hostage returns home.
Literally did not answer his question, but okay.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
She does relent every single day, just like her leader. I asked a very simple question.
There it is.
Mobs have taken to the streets in front of Jewish homes, hospitals,
Seniors.
and businesses to shout anti-Semitic hate slogans. I quoted a number of them and invited the minister to rise to her feet and specifically condemn them, to stand with Jews against the anti-Semitism that has been allowed to proliferate on our streets. So once again, will she condemn these anti-Semitic chants?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, today is October 7th, an anniversary of a horrific attack on Jews. 1,200 people killed, over 200 people taken hostage. Our solidarity is with Jews in Israel and with Jewish people in Canada and right around the world.
They just can't answer the question.
Against absolutely is the amount of hatred that we have seen in this country and countries around the world where people will target Jewish Canadian schools, daycares, and synagogues for the acts that they have a problem with on another side of the world. We are better than that in this country. We need to stand up against that kind of hatred in support of Jewish people and in place of all people who defend their ability to worship how and whom they choose.
Wow. Can't answer the question. It's embarrassing.
Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors came here to the Hill last week to ask for old age security to be increased by 10%. According to a poll, 79% of people agree with that. 79%. And elected officials voted unanimously for it. We just need the government to grant royal recommendation to C-319, but it doesn't want to because it says that that's not how things are done. We are bringing up seniors' living conditions. We're bringing up democracy. And meanwhile, the government keeps talking about procedure. When will they stop dragging their feet and grant royal recommendation? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, I visited with many seniors in my riding over the weekend. I have dialogued with them, and knowing my honourable colleague, I'm sure that he has been very clear with seniors. For example, the fact that he is opposed to lowering retirement age to 65, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. When we increased the guaranteed income supplement, the Bloc voted against, and when we brought in dental care for thousands of seniors in Quebec, the Bloc Québécois voted against that. The member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, seniors are mobilizing to increase their pensions. 79% of people agree. All parties voted for it at committee, and yet the Liberals just keep talking to us about procedural problems. And the same thing applies to the issue of supply management. Farmers want C-282. All of the parties voted for it, but it's stuck in the Senate, and once again the Liberals are refusing to do anything. In both cases, the Liberals are talking to us about procedural problems, but is the real problem that the Liberals just don't care?
Culture Niagara Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My honourable colleague is well aware that it was our party that initiated the supply management program. It's our party that supported the supply management program through its history. It's a very successful program, and we supported 282, and we urge the other place to move on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good job. L'honorable député de New Westminster.
The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby. Mr. Speaker, the right to housing is critical, but the housing crisis has only gotten worse since the Liberals...
Like, where the hell is Jagmeet?
The Liberals and the Conservatives before them sold more than 1 million affordable housing units to rich developers so that they could get rich at the expense of families. The Liberals let rents double. Meanwhile, the Conservatives helped their real estate donors get rich. Both of these parties provoked the housing crisis. Why do they want families to pay the price for what they've done? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is right to oppose the Conservatives. When the Leader of the Opposition was Minister for Housing for the entire country, he only managed to build 6 affordable housing units. But my NDP colleague is also right to say that the Conservative leader is cynical. He's saying that helping seniors who live in low-income housing or co-ops would be encouraging a Soviet lifestyle.
The housing crisis in Indigenous communities continues to be a stain on this government's record. Over 300,000 Indigenous people continue to live in unsuitable housing. The Liberals promised to build homes for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities and broke it. To make matters worse, Indigenous people are still reeling from the Conservatives' cuts to housing until this day. Liberals break promises, Conservatives gut and cut, Indigenous people pay the price. When will this government finally act to build the homes Indigenous people desperately need?
Pierre never once said he's going to gut those programs.
Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our colleague is entirely right. That's why we have been building thousands and tens of thousands of homes for Indigenous Canadians and other Canadians in the last 9 years.
No, he has not.
Built on the record of the Conservative leader with 6 affordable apartments in his entire mandate, we would be a long way from what is needed for Indigenous Canadians in 2024. In addition to that, as I said,
He's talking like he just learned English.
Support seniors and Indigenous Canadians when they live in low-rent housing because he believes it encourages a sort of Soviet-style housing conditions.
Wow, that was brave.
L'honorable chef de l'opposition.
I gave the Foreign Affairs Minister 2 opportunities to condemn the increasingly common and terrifying anti-Semitic chants we hear in the streets. Israel will soon be gone. There is only one solution, intifada, revolution. Twice she refused to condemn those remarks. She continues to pander to Hamas supporters in the Liberal Party as part of her leadership campaign rather than doing her job. So I'll give her another chance. Will she publicly support Israel's right to retaliate against the tyrants of Tehran and the terrorists in Hezbollah and Hamas to protect itself? Yes or no?
Yeah. If we don't do politics about...
Hold on. Hold on. The speaker didn't announce you. Nobody heard you.
I just want to encourage all members to ensure, consistent with rulings in the past, and I will come back to this near the end of question period, but just to caution all members to please be judicious in their words. The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, if there's a day where we don't do politics about people's lives being taken or people being killed, it's today.
Look at their fake enthusiasm. One person stood up.
Form of anti-Semitism, I hope, in this House. Any form of discrimination. And I really hope that my colleague in front will apologize.
You've got people friggin' waving Hezbollah and Hamas flags in the streets of Toronto and Ottawa. What the hell's the matter with you?
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
There was ever a day when we needed a government to stand up for what was right, this
It's
would be
today. Holy smokes.
has sought to divide Canadians by saying one thing to one group and precisely the opposite to another group. And here in this House, remaining radio silent on condemning anti-Semitic chants and on supporting Israel's right to truly defend itself by retaliating against the terrorists and tyrants. Why won't she do the right thing and stand beside the Jewish people today?
There you go, man.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, 1 year ago in the Middle East, peace was broken by a violent terrorist attack by Hamas. On this side of the ocean, we deserve to do better in terms of the protest that we articulate. It needs to be peaceful. What that means is you don't go out on the streets and target a daycare. You don't go out on the streets and target a community center. You don't go out on the streets and target a synagogue. Our resolve to fight anti-Semitism is strong. It has been strong since this parliament started when we outlawed the willful promotion of anti-Semitism. It is even stronger now when we're advocating for more strict penalties, which that party opposes.
The The honourable member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands.
Here we go.
Speaker, it was you who ruled that this NDP Liberal government obstructed a lawful order of this House by not turning over the evidence in the $400 million corruption scandal. It has this Parliament paralysed and unable to deal with the misery and chaos that's been created after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. And taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up for the cover-up of this latest corruption scandal. So will they simply provide the evidence to the police so that this House can get back to its work of holding them accountable?
The honourable leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, that member is again false in his statements, because what you clearly ruled was that this matter should be sent to committee for further study, because it is the first time in this Parliament's history that it is taking its extraordinary powers and abusing them in such an egregious way. The issue with which the honourable member is discussing has been dealt with by this government, but it's up to the Conservatives to stop obstructing their own obstruction so that we can all get back to the important work of governing for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Only a Liberal would get up in this place and say that the majority of members in this House who were democratically elected, exercising powers that are legally bestowed upon this Parliament, are somehow infringing upon this government's constitutional right to not be investigated by the RCMP for their own corruption. It's absolutely
she's got it backwards.
Over 186 conflicts of interest, $400 million lining the pockets of well-connected Liberal insiders, while Canadians are lined up at food banks in record numbers. So we want to know if this government's expecting the NDP to bail them out and stop us from holding them to account.
Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear about two things. In terms of a criminal prosecution, the way it normally unfolds is the police seek a search warrant from a judge. The judge evaluates the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
If you've got nothing to hide, why are you nervous?
That party cares not. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, we also have this fundamental premise. It's called police independence. We safeguard it in Canada. You know who doesn't safeguard it? Authoritarian regimes. I guess the leader of the opposition and his minions are sharing their blatant observation and favoritism towards authoritarian tactics in this House.
Randy jumps up. Yay! That's pretty funny.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, history will remember that this government is corrupt. The latest example, the Green Fund, which ultimately became a slush fund for this government's buddies. The Auditor General was scathing. The leaders of the fund gave money to their own companies 186 times.
Oh my
God.
God.
Is corruption that deserves a police investigation. My question is very clear. When will the Liberals comply with your ruling to give the documents to the police so they can do their work? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, for Louis Saint Laurent, but only the Conservatives could manage to filibuster their own motion. I've never seen anything like it. Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, this is coming from a government that used wartime powers to freeze bank accounts to 72-year-old Susie or Karen
Independent reports
that donated money to a legal protest in Canada and then took away their rights. These people are freaking crazy.
Council. We believe that we have taken the right measures to ensure good governance of that program. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, I also respect the Minister, but the problem is that the AG herself said that the Minister did not do his work properly and was not paying enough attention to what was happening within the fund. And we know that people here at the table are saying that the RCMP does not have all the documents. The only way to ensure that the RCMP can properly do its work is to ensure that the Liberals actually provide all of the documents. When will the Minister finally stand up and do his duty? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, again, I have a great deal of respect for my colleague, but there have been 4 independent reports. Not one, 4. 4 independent reports were produced. And the RCMP commissioner has said in an open letter that the
Chihuahua.
RCMP had access to all the documents. So in the interest of Canadians and democracy, in the interests of our work here in the House, we are asking the Conservatives to stop filibustering their own motion and to work hard in the interest of all Canadians. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to come back to C-282, a bill that protects supply management. We were wondering why two senators, Peter Beam and Peter Harder, were blocking the bill in the Senate. Well, now we know why. Because of Dimitri Soudas, former advisor to Stephen Harper. He said about the two senators that they are two former deputy ministers who tried many times to convince Stephen Harper to abandon the supply management program. I was there, he said. So these two Liberal-appointed senators are trying to topple something that was voted in this House. Is that acceptable for the Liberals?
Alimentaire.
The Honourable Minister of Agriculture.
L'honorable ministre Revenu National.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je peux vous
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. I assure you that all Liberals
Didn't she
support
quit?
supply management, just like our bloc
Oh no, that's Pam.
Conservatives. Well, I can't say the same for them. We have had a conversation with the Senate. We are talking with senators, just like my colleague from the bloc, but the Senate is independent. These senators are independent. They need to do their work, and we expect them to do their work diligently. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. What's happening in the Senate is very serious. These two non-elected officials are attacking our farmers and also the very basis of our democracy. This is where we vote in legislation in this House. If Peter Beam and Peter Harder don't agree with this legislation and want different legislation, then they should have the courage to step down from the Senate and get elected. This is where democracy has its seat. Our people's representatives are here and they supported C-282. So will the government ensure that these two senators respect democracy? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same question, same answer. My colleague gave a very clear answer. We support supply management.
What's that pin that he's wearing?
The Liberal Party.
It's Canadian flag on the left and something else on the right.
We have always been very consistent in our position,
Is it
unlike some
Quebec?
members in this House. We have defended supply management even when President Trump wanted to get rid of it and when the Conservatives were asking us to capitulate. Before giving the floor to the member for Berthier-Masquinongé, I would like to invite the members for Mirabel and Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier to ensure that they do not speak until they receive the floor from the Speaker. The Honourable Member. Well, Mr. Speaker, adopting C-282 will be critical for dairy, poultry, and egg producers. That's not according to me. That's what it says in an open letter from the milk, eggs, chicken, and turkey producers of Canada, which just shows that when the Bloc Québécois supports Quebec's interests, sometimes it's such a great idea that all of Canada wants the same thing. Quebec and Canadian farmers want the same thing. This is good for everyone. So will all of the parties ask the Senate to stop blocking this consensus and pass C-282? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I entirely agree with my colleague from the Bloc Québécois.
Rub-a-dub-dub, Justin's taking something in the tub.
Make sure that it continues. It's very important for land use in Canada. The bill is in the Senate at the moment, and we expect senators to deal with it diligently.